Now, just a warning, some people may find the subject matter of our next story triggering, as it has references to suicide. Registered suicide rates are at their highest in more than 2 decades, with 3/4 of deaths among males. The Office for National Statistics revealed that there were just over 6,000 who took their own life last year, up from 5,600 in 2022. The CEO of the suicide prevention charity Ripple is encouraging employers to have a more proactive response and protect people's mental health. At work, they've developed a tool to limit the access people have to harmful online content. Tanya has been speaking to Alice about the charity and her own experience after losing her brother.
There's many factors that could be a reasoning behind why these rates are so high. Certainly the financial crisis that we're in, the cost of living, does play a part. Lots of people are struggling out there with being able to cope with the increase in their bills and the cost of living on a day-to-day basis. I think there's also the situation with the world events, which absolutely are playing a part. Again, it's pretty grim. There's lots of wars, there's lots of negativity out there that people are viewing and reading about on a daily basis. That doesn't help. And of course, there is still a huge stigma surrounding the topic of mental health and indeed suicide, which we at Ripple work very hard to try to mitigate.
We'll talk a little bit more about Ripple shortly and the work that you do to try and help this situation. But I just want to go back to the increased number of people who are taking their own lives. Are there any specific demographics or areas, regions across the country where people are sort of struggling more?
To be honest, it's pretty varied. Typically, men between the ages of 50 to 60 years of age are at the highest risk of suicide. But the problem with suicide is it doesn't discriminate. This could impact anybody of any gender, any religion, any race, in any location. So apart from men being absolutely at a higher risk to women, 75% of suicides in this country are male. Other than that particular statistic, it's very much varied and takes place across the whole of the UK, sadly.
Yeah, incredibly worrying. Let's talk about Ripple now and the work that you do with this charity to try and better the situation. And it starts really on the computer when people are, privately at home. How does the work that you do try to help people?
So I lost my brother Josh to suicide in November of 2020, and I found that he had been going on the internet and searching for how he could end his life. And it was those searches that he was conducting that gave him tips, encouragement on how he could actually go about doing that. So in response to losing my brother, I've set up a charity called Ripple, and essentially what it is a piece of technology. It's available to download as a browser extension and be placed on Wi-Fi networks. And it means that if anybody was to go on the internet and conduct a harmful search relating to the topic of self-harm or suicide, then the Ripple technology would intervene on that search and instead signpost that person to mental health support services that they can access both now and in the longer term. Sadly, what we are seeing, which aligns with the suicide rates being at their highest rate now since 1999, is people do go on the internet to search for answers with this. And so we are really there as a safety net, if you like, to try to take them down a more hopeful path.
Yeah. And have you found that there is more of a demand for your services now with the figures going up? Is there a correlation there? Are internet providers or people at home, are they reacting and now thinking, okay, let's try and put something in place?
Yes, absolutely. We've been approached now by hundreds of schools, colleges, universities to download Ripple for free to safeguard their students. And it's the same situation with corporates now as well, wanting to put an additional layer in place to safeguard their staff and their employees. 1.2 million internet searches are conducted every single month on how to take your own life around the world. So it's a real situation. It aligns fully with the situation that we're seeing on a wider scale with suicide rates. And we're doing all we can to try to make a difference.
And just on a personal level, you know, for anyone that's watching who might be thinking, oh, I'm really worried about, you know, a family member or a friend, you know, apart from putting these kind of measures in place, how do you sort of go about perhaps looking to try and help someone? You know, were there any early warning signs that you saw, you know, with your brother? Were there conversations that you had that you would perhaps recommend that other people have?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing really, which is a very big myth out there, is that if you speak to somebody about the topic of suicide, you'll put the idea in their head, which simply isn't the case. The best advice I could give somebody is, if you are worried about someone and you think they are contemplating suicide, please ask them. Because the chances are that when you do ask them that very important question, they're going to feel relieved and then have that opportunity to open up about how they are really feeling. And then you can get the support measures in place to help them through their difficult time. In terms of signs to look out for in your loved ones, it can be very subtle. Weight gain, weight loss, mood swings, selling of possessions. In my brother's case, he shaved all of his hair off and started to take absolutely no interest in his appearance and what he was looking like. And for him, that was different. That wasn't the norm. So looking back, that was absolutely a sign. But it is also important to say that sometimes there are no signs. So it's important to have that open conversation and communication channel where people can feel comfortable in talking about how they're really feeling and be honest and open about that in order to get them the support that they need.
Yeah, no, some really, really valuable advice there. And beyond that, there are charities and obviously the NHS who can offer, you know, kind of support around if anyone is struggling with their mental health. When you had to go through this awful thing, were there charities that you then worked with in the aftermath of it, that you would perhaps, you know, that you liked the work that they were doing?
Yes, absolutely. So there are the obvious ones here, which are the likes of Samaritans and of course NHS 111, your GP, but there are alternatives as well. So for instance, Shout has a free text service for people to get support. Calm has a web chat facility that is available for men. There's also a few apps that I would recommend using as well. One is called the Hub of Hope, and it contains a plethora of resources and support services that you can access in your local area all in one place. And there's another one that I think is fantastic where you can build support plans for yourself, which is called Grassroots Stay Alive.
There you go, Alice from the charity Ripple there. And if you or anyone you know is struggling, please reach out to your local GP or seek help from a registered charity. There are plenty. Papyrus, Calm and Samaritans are just a few.